Hello.
Hello.
You're very prompt.
Oh, am I?
Yes, you are.
If you love listening to this show, please consider giving a rating and a review on Amazon Alexa or wherever you listen. We want to continue bringing you this amazing content, and part of our ability to do that means that we need a big audience. Now, it may not seem like much, but rating and reviewing the show will help more people find us, just like how you found this show. Simply on any podcast platform, search for a show, scroll down to the bottom, and push 5 stars. It's that easy. Thanks for supporting the show. So today I'm joined by Annya Sand, who is a contemporary artist known for her signature abstract art. Thanks for joining today.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for inviting me.
So my understanding is that you're a third generation artist. So it runs in the family, is that right?
That's right, yes. So my grandfather used to be an architect, and my father was an artist and a jeweler, and I am the artist.
Gotcha. So I wonder if some of that artistry runs in kind of innately in the DNA, or do you feel that your upbringing and the surrounding that you grew up in really influenced who you became, as well as the career and even your artistic style?
I think both, to be honest. I think being an artist, it is part of your DNA. You cannot avoid it. But also the surroundings that I grew up in. For example, I spent a lot of time in my father's art studio, and I'm sure it has influenced my love for the arts and culture in general. Also, I grew up in a very modest background, and we didn't have much really, so I had to spend a lot of time in making my own things, my own toys, and I think that helped me to develop imagination and apply it later now in my craft.
Well, I can certainly empathize about the creativity part, but that will be for another session. So I'm curious to know, when we think about your predecessors and the legacy they've built, I'm sure that has really helped pave your career and open up doors that perhaps maybe other artists would have had difficulties accessing. But at the same time, do you feel like it has also set a very high bar for you in terms of expectation, not just from your family, but from the art world?
Not really, because I was born in Kazakhstan, and my father was a well-known jeweler there. So coming to England, I really had nowhere to turn to when it came to pursuing my art career. So it was sort of a lot of my own consistent work and trying different galleries. But at home, of course, I think it's very hard for me to compare myself to my father, because to me he was a genius and his work is absolutely impeccable. But yes, here I had to work very, very hard to get where I am today.
And when did you make that transition from Kazakhstan to Western Europe?
I was 12 years old, and my parents decided to send me here to study because back in Kazakhstan we were going through a very difficult period. I don't know if you know much about the 90s in the Soviet era. So everything kind of collapsed, and they had an opportunity to send me to England to have a better future, if that makes sense. And I went to a private college, and that's it. I fell in love with England and stayed here.
Very nice. Well, we have interviewed people that have actually were the first to immigrate from some of the former USSR
really?
blocks, and it's a very interesting kind of a harrowing experience and a journey that they had to go through. But coming back to your artwork, you've had unique access to the UN, various different museums and private collections. So I'm curious to know a couple of things. One is, when you think about the various pieces that you created, what are some of the pieces that you're particularly fond of? And also where you feel that it really, the exhibition location really did a great job displaying and really highlighting the work that you've done?
I think my first very memorable experience of exhibiting my artwork was in Uzbekistan, where I had a solo exhibition in their National Gallery. I was very honored to be invited, and the attention and the reviews that I received were very, very flattering to me. Then, of course, working with UNESCO was a huge step in my career, and exhibiting at the UN headquarters in New York was a very serious step for me, and it meant a lot. So I'm very grateful to them for taking interest in my work. In terms of my art pieces, I quite like my sort of sustainability activism works that were not exhibited anywhere yet. But I take a big pride in them, because I think all these things are very personal, Scott. After becoming a mother, for example, my priorities shifted drastically, and I started looking into other things, not in my own needs, but into how I can sort of provide a future that my child can actually look forward to. And that's when I started exploring sustainability, humanity, and what our planet faces. And that's when I created one of my pieces called Bloody Decadence. I believe you have an image of that. Maybe we could share. So that piece has challenged my own very questionable values at that time, and I think maybe that's why it means so much to me. So after studying animal cruelty within the fashion industry, I created a piece that confronted consumer culture head-on, in addition to the basic values of humanity towards other living creatures on this planet. Bloody Decadence symbolizes how much we buy without thinking about the consequences for the environment, things like makeup, clothes, electronics, things that we don't actually need in such large quantities. However, where every single purchase contributes to harming the environment. So that piece itself is a fur coat of mine that I painted in red paint, symbolizing blood of all the animals that were butchered in order for me to wear that piece 2 or 3 times a year. So this was a really turning point for me in my life and in my art, where I started exploring more difficult question, per se.
Well, I think all of us are guilty of that decadence and consumption. And I think one of the things that comes to mind is when it comes to, such type of politically infused art, it really is a bold statement. And I'm curious to know the eventual patron that ends up, that's going to be acquiring some of your pieces. I wonder if they're purchasing it because of the values and the message behind it, or to them it's just another collection of art piece.
I don't know, maybe both, because some people are more interested in politics and activism, and they're more responsible, I suppose, towards the world, and they take the responsibility by supporting mind-like people, but others probably just buy it to be another art piece in their collection.
Now, your type of work is a kind of work that really requires display in a public domain, meaning that, in a museum where as many people as possible can interact with it and engage with it and feel that message resonate with them internally. It's not the kind of pieces that would do well in some private collection, although I'm sure that still happens. Do you kind of have a influence or direction in terms of where your pieces will end up?
I personally would like my artwork to be supported by public collections more than anything, because then they have this opportunity. I say that about my works, have an opportunity to be exposed to the public a lot more and have that space to breathe and interact with. So yes, to me, I think public collections are sort of my goal.
Great. Perfect. Aside from that piece, can you talk about maybe another piece that's part of your collection where you're conveying a message? And I know you did share 3 in particular.
Of course, another work of mine that is called Artivism, Playing with Shadows. It represents issues within the art community. The piece itself is a wooden palette underneath which, as you can see, that there is a shadow. The shadow emphasizes that anything we do in the world will follow us forever, wherever we go, just like shadow does. So implying that every action has a consequence, and I therefore think as a community, as an art community, we should have some kind of solidarity to protect our planet and come up with more sophisticated solutions for global issues.
And why did you happen to use a gun metaphor for the shadow?
To have a more to have a bold message, a statement, strong, something that anyone can not relate to, but can recognize the image and recognize the power behind that image. And I guess maybe I thought of a gun being, a damaging thing for our society. Therefore, the damage that we do will follow us forever. I guess that was my thinking process at the time.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. I wrote an article in Forbes a while back about UN SDGs and specifically the kind of capital that we need on an annual basis for the next 15, 20 years to actually realize some of these goals. And it more or less kind of worked out to be about the amount of money that gets kind of lost to corruption. So to that end, I wonder, and again, I'm going to kind of bring it closer to your domain a little bit, and I recognize that it can be a little bit sensitive, but when we talk about politics and the power, certain powerful people have been known to evade U.S. or EU sanctions or launder money through high-end art markets. What are your thoughts about that? And how do you, when you're trying to convey a certain message around sustainability, around impact, but yet the medium itself is being potentially subject to not just manipulation, but for profiting of corrupt individuals?
Well, honestly, Scott, I had a few pieces that I was not able to exhibit in London. You'd think it's, a westernized country where, first world country. However, I was told that galleries didn't want to have any associations against any individuals, which is understandable because they need to sell and they need to make money, so they don't want to take a side. But to me as an artist, it was quite upsetting not to be able to express myself how I want to, and not to be able to show what I want to show to the public. So my feelings about the world, I wish I could create more things that can reflect on those issues. And I really wish I could show those pieces to the public. So I haven't found the way how to quite go around it and be able to kind of address it head on.
Yeah, that's especially within, I think, art activism, that's got to be a relatively kind of a common dilemma, because while being an artist by nature, it's about creativity, it's about an open medium to be able to communicate and convey and to influence, but at the same time, it's also a career, it's a means to an end. So, you can't just have a lot of pieces just for the purposes of displaying. You have to be able to actually monetize and sell it to art collectors and so forth. So, and I recognize that you're still kind of navigating that, but do all of your pieces eventually get sold privately or to public spaces, or are there some pieces that you personally hold on to because you value them in some capacity?
Well, majority of my pieces are sold to my private collectors. I have some pieces that were sold to public collections and museums, and there are some pieces that that are very personal to me and that I cannot sell. And it's quite funny, actually. This is when you need a very good art agent behind you, because if I have a collector coming into my studio and they like something that I like, and perhaps I'm not very fond of that particular collector, I always put the price up and up, hoping they're not going to buy it. So yeah, it's very strange for artists. You need to have somebody to actually sell your work, because you do become very attached to certain pieces.
That's very interesting. Of course, the higher that you increase your pricing, sometimes it has an interesting effect where people may be more allured and interested in that piece.
Yeah, exactly. Very odd.
I wish we had a little bit more time, but how can listeners follow your work?
You can follow me on my website, anyasandart.com.
Perfect. So today I've been joined by Annya Sand, who is a contemporary artist as well as an art activist. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this episode, take a moment to rate our show on any podcast platform that you listen to. Scroll down to the bottom and push 5 stars. It's that easy. And as always, thanks for listening.